Hey friends, Devin here with Backcountry Exposure. We've got an interesting topic to discuss today. We're gonna go over how a backpacking quilt is made. And I've got Chad, the man from UGQ Outdoor, to help go through the Bandit Top Quilt. That's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
I thought it'd be cool to go through here at the UGQ shop where they make quilts every day and just break down how a backpacking quilt is made. All right, we're at the cutting table here. These guys are gonna show how they roll everything out, get it marked up, and ready for the next step.
There's a lot, probably more, you might say, efficient ways of doing what they're doing. But at the end of the day, the step-by-step line drawing and all the micro details that we're putting into this allows a couple things. They're able to see any potential defect on the fabric. They're able to very accurately lay out every single line one at a time to make sure that it's of the utmost quality. And this is just kind of part of our quality control. This ensures eyes really all over this piece of fabric before it even gets to sewing. The bars that we have made all are basically our templates. They have all of the reference marks so that they can quickly put their reference marks and lines on so that they can do it as fast as we can do it. But you know, I am a firm believer on the hand, what's the word I'm looking for? Doing it by hand. Handcrafted. See, that's why I rely on these guys. Handcrafted, because again, it brings that personal touch all the way through the entire product, all the way to the end. And you'll see that as we go, that everything has a lot of eyes on it, a lot of checks, a lot of ensuring that it's of the utmost quality. Once they're done laying everything out on the cut table, the next step in the process is obviously over to sewing. Alyssa and Tom are our two full-time sewers. They're pretty much rock stars at everything that they do. Right now they're actually both working on Quillos, which if you haven't checked out, make sure you do so. But they're both working on Quillos right now, which are actually sewn through construction, so there's no baffles, so you can't see that. But this would be the step where they would add the baffles to an inner piece, and then eventually they would attach the outer piece to the other side of that baffle. And then after that, it would go off to filling. This is where we fill the quilts, and they have a special formula for every single product that we fill. So we put the entire bag of down on the scale. But basically every chamber has a given fill amount. So as they're pulling that amount out of the bucket, it's gonna read a negative value on the scale. And that tells us that we're where we're at on the fill sheet. So one person's filling the bucket, the other person is running the hose with the foot pedal, so that they're basically filling one chamber at a time. This system actually, as crazy as it sounds, being only like $100, we can fill a quilt really fast. Just a real quick breakdown of fill power. The higher you go in fill power, the longer the strands are going to be on a given piece of down. And so what this allows is it allows these clusters, here we go, here's a good example, to interlock at a greater distance and trap air at a greater distance. So the higher you go in fill power, the less overall volume that's required to achieve that given temp rating. And the lower you go in fill power, those clusters get smaller and smaller and smaller, thus needing more of it to achieve that same temp rating. That's the extremely high quality down. So same thing, this is our 950. So those strands, I don't know how well you can see, a white back or black background. Yeah. Those strands are much longer. The primary difference is that basically it just requires less overall volume the higher you go in fill power, just because of the distance that the down is able to trap air at. Once a quilt is filled, they kind of all get stacked up down here on this table. And you'll see that this currently is actually wide open. So that's kind of the idea behind the baffles. You can see this is, I can tell right off the bat, this is a 0 degree just by looking at the height of that baffle. This will go to the closing station where they will sew all of this closed, put all the finishing details on it, and then from there it'll go over to the finishing tables to get pounded out, and all of the finished cords and snaps and whatever it might have on it. So after filling and after they're closed, most of the down is all kind of clumped up in one end. So what we would do next is we would actually literally just kind of beat this thing to oblivion, but we would essentially pound all the down and distribute it evenly throughout the whole chamber. It does a couple things. A, it introduces air into the chamber, so that it really gives the down the opportunity to loft up and trap that air, and that's where you're going to see the real plumpy loft look from, is by introducing air. We decided several years ago to switch from an all horizontal chamber design to a split design. And the main reason is because what we noticed with the all horizontal design, that we were getting what's called like a bridging effect. So as you would lay in the top quilt, you would have this kind of bridging effect where it would create this much larger air gap. And so by having the chambers run horizontally, you'll see it automatically starts to naturally drape. So it actually makes contact with your chest, and that minimizes any of the dead space in there, so your body's not working harder than it has to heat up the space. But the other thing that it also allows is what we call zone filling. And so some people are very cold sleepers, and they want the ability to overstuff the top half of their quilt, but their feet may get hot, or their feet might be really cold and the torso isn't so much. So we allow people to overstuff either just the foot box option or the torso option, or both.
Gotcha. So at this point right here, there's a break in the stitching that we've got down insulation that comes up to this point. There's a mesh baffle right here, and then it goes into a horizontal. So you have vertical baffles and then horizontal baffles here in the foot box. So now your down insulation that maybe all the way up here at your neck doesn't make its way all the way down into your foot box. Makes for a much warmer sleeping experience. But on the back of the quilts, what's nice about a backpacking quilt is it creates an opportunity for you to not feel as constricted and claustrophobic like you might feel in a mummy bag. But how do you essentially eliminate drafts? Because if I'm like tossing and turning from side to side, how is this going to still keep me warm if I don't have insulation all the way around me?
You're never going to fully eliminate drafts. Let me rephrase that. You can, but it comes with experience. There's always a learning curve switching to a quilt if you're used to a mummy bag, etc.
So we're talking from a ground sleeping standpoint, using a quilt. How is this going to have design elements that reduce some of those drafts?
There you go. That's the question that we need to answer.
There you go.
So we have a couple things. The first is obviously the integrated pad attachment system.
Okay.
And so this is a pretty standard sleep system that you see across a lot of different manufacturers, but essentially a piece of elastic webbing that goes around your pad. So basically your pad would be in between these. This would strap your quilt to the pad to ensure that it's locked in place so that you can essentially roll freely inside there without it being lifted up. But the other thing that we always noticed was that if you look, between these attachment points, you've got over 12 inches of space here. When this is not under tension and you have this attached to your pad, but it's not quite fully taut, you've got now this big flap that's being created where a lot of air is able to come in. So that's where we introduced our dynamic tension control system. So then that basically eliminates that whole flap. And this will actually hug it to your body really nicely. It'll create a much tighter seal to the pad. And that will, between these two systems, it'll do a really great job of minimizing drafts. But again, there's always going to be that learning curve when learning how to roll and how to make sure things are kind of being shifted around properly. But like you said, the benefit of using a quilt, once you learn how to use it, in my opinion, as a quilt manufacturer, far surpasses the benefits of a full mummy bag or sleeping bag.
Well, there's the quick and dirty of how a backpacking quilt is made, specifically a UGQ quilt by this guy and his amazing team.
Not me, just that.
Anything else you want to add, Chad?
Nope, you nailed it.
He's done. He's done. Anyway, check out UGQ, amazing products, and family-owned company, just really, really cool people, and that's that. So.
And that's my wife, Brittany, right there.
Hey, hey.
Thanks, guys. Subscribe if you're not. Have an awesome day. Catch you on the next one. See you later. Woo. Nailed it.